Gas house dog. I mean, what a name, right? It conjures up quite an image.
Definitely makes you think. But, back in the 19th century, that name belonged to a dog people really, really respected.
Right. And that's what we're diving into today, the story, the legacy of the gas house dog, also went by McDonald's grip.
Exactly. He's a really key figure if you look at the history of the American Pit Bull Terrier. Super important.
And our source material for this is pretty interesting. We're using excerpts from APBT Info. That's a website focused on the breed's history.
Uh-huh.
And these bits come from a new edition of a book by Eugene Glass, originally from 1910, called Fighting Pit Bull and Bull Terrier.
Wow, 1910. So proper historical stuff.
Yeah, and Glass wasn't just anyone. He was the editor for The Dog Fancier, which was a big deal in the dog world back then. He knew his stuff.
So he was right in the thick of it. Okay. So what's our plan here? What are we trying to get out of this?
Good question. Basically, we want to pull out the core story. What made the gas house dog so special? What impact did he have? Give you the highlights, the surprising bits maybe, without getting totally bogged down in every single detail.
Makes sense. A focused look at his significance. Where should we start? His reputation.
Sounds good. The text kicks right off saying he was one of the finest breeding dogs of his time. That's pretty high praise.
It really is. Sets the stage immediately. And they also call him McDonald's grip right away.
Yeah, what's the significance of the grip part?
Well, grip in that world referred to like how the dog would bite and hold during a fight. A desirable trait, obviously, for what they were bred for then. So being known as grip suggests he was maybe famous for that specific quality.
Ah, okay. So both names tell you something.
Exactly. And then they immediately compare him to another dog, McGough's Bob, or Bob the Fool.
Right. Why bring him up so early?
Well, it shows you that even then they were thinking in terms of lineage, pedigree. Comparing top dogs, understanding who is related to who it was, already crucial for judging a dog's worth.
Like keeping stats on athletes today almost.
Yeah.
Okay, so lineage was key. Let's talk about his mother then, Sweeney's Fly. The text gives her quite the introduction.
No, absolutely. She gets called perhaps the best female dog America ever had. I mean, that's huge.
Seriously, that tells you the gas house dog wasn't just a fluke, right? He came from good stock, as they say.
Exactly. Exceptional stock, it sounds like. And they back it up with examples like Thornton's Pete.
Yeah, what was his story? It sounds dramatic.
Well, he's called remarkable. Apparently he won a big fight against Jennings' Croppy, but then died right after.
Wow, intense.
Very. But the point is, he was Sweeney's Fly's son. It shows she produced dogs with, well, incredible gameness or fighting ability, according to the standards of the time.
And it wasn't just him, was it? The text mentions other litters.
Right. She wasn't a one-hit wonder. When she was bred with Gallivan's Old Prince, she produced Quinn's Tony and Harrington's Dick, described as exceptional dogs.
So consistently good offspring.
Seems like it. It really highlights her value as a brood bitch. She reliably passed on those traits they were looking for.
Okay, and what about her last litter?
Yeah, her final one was with Burke's Tanner that produced Gallivan's pup and another dog, Young Prince.
And Young Prince is important because...
Because he was the sire of Turk.
Ah, Turk. And he's famous for something specific.
Yeah, the text mentions Turk won a legendary battle in Chicago, so you see this line, this successful lineage, stretching back through Young Prince right to Sweeney's Fly, and of course, including the gas house dog himself.
It really is like tracing a dynasty. Fascinating stuff. But then there's this connection outside the immediate dog world that caught my eye, John L. Sullivan, the boxer.
Yeah, isn't that something? It really puts the dog's reputation into a wider context. So the story goes, in 1914, John L. Sullivan, huge celebrity fighter, gets himself a dog from the gas house strain.
Just any dog, or?
Apparently a very good one. Sullivan supposedly said its quality was unmatched.
Wow, from him. That's a massive endorsement for the time.
Absolutely. Someone that famous, known for, well, fighting prowess himself, praising the dog like that, it has a lot of weight to the gas house dog's reputation. Makes you wonder what Sullivan saw in it.
Yeah, definitely. And this didn't go unnoticed in the dog community, right? Yeah. Someone named May G. McDonald Mahoney reacted.
Exactly. She was Johnny McDonald's daughter, the McDonald from McDonald's grip.
The connection.
Right. And she apparently wrote this really heartfelt response in the Dog Fancier magazine, celebrating Sullivan's comments and, really championing her father's dog and legacy.
Gives it a personal touch, doesn't it? You feel the pride there.
Totally. It shows how much these dogs and their lineage meant to the people involved.
Okay, let's maybe zoom out a bit and talk more about the source itself. Eugene Glass's book, Fighting Pit Bull and Bull Terrier. What kind of book was it?
Well, it's a new edition of the 1910 original, so it's a window straight back into that era. Glass, being the editor of the Dog Fancier, was clearly trying to create like a comprehensive guide.
To just the dogs, or more than that?
Much more. It mixes history, the backgrounds of bull terriers and American Pit Bull Terriers with practical advice, like really practical.
How practical are we talking?
Well, things like breeding strategies and training methods. We already talked about pedigree being important, so you can bet that's covered.
Okay, what else? The list of topics mentioned is pretty eye-opening.
It really is. You've got sections like training for the pit, breeding and care of the combat dog, specifics like training with spring pole and cat mill, which were old training devices.
Right, and rules.
Yeah, different sets of rules for the pit. Mentions Police Gazette rules, Bowser rules, Old English rules. So it suggests there were different sort of formal codes for conducting these fights.
So it wasn't just a free-for-all, necessarily. There were structures.
Seems that way. It really paints a picture of a whole subculture with its own practices and regulations.
It even lists training for rat-killing competition and its regulations. That's kind of a side note I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, ratting was another activity these dogs were sometimes involved in. The book seems to cover the whole spectrum of competitive uses back then.
And then it gets into handling the dog in the pit and even care after a fight.
Right. So really, a start-to-finish manual for someone involved in canine combat at that time. It also mentions tons of other dogs and people: Tiger Jim, Red Patty, Sem's Colonel, Colby Pinscher, and Tej, King Patty, loads of names.
So it's a real who's who and what's what of that world.
Definitely seems like a deep historical resource for that specific niche.
And who did Glass, or perhaps the APBT INFO site presenting it now, see as the audience?
The site says it's for lovers of the history of the American Pit Bull Terrier, people specifically interested in the history of fighting dogs and learning about everything related to the world of canine combat back then. It's clearly positioned as a historical document.
Which brings us to a really important point, the disclaimer on the website.
Crucial, yeah. They explicitly state the content is for historical and educational purposes only, and they do not promote or endorse dogfighting in any form.
Absolutely essential to keep that context in mind when looking at this kind of material. We're looking back, not condoning.
Exactly. It's about understanding the past, not replicating it.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what are the big takeaways about the Gas House dog?
Well, number one, he was clearly a massive deal in his time. One of the finest breeding dogs, as the source says, known as McDonald Grip, highly respected.
And his family background, especially his mother, Sweeney's Fly, was exceptional. That lineage produced multiple significant dogs in that historical fighting context.
Right. His quality wasn't random. It was part of a recognized, successful line. And his reputation wasn't just known among dog breeders.
Yeah, the John L. Sullivan connection really underscores that. Getting praise from a major public figure like him boosted the dog's status significantly.
And we also get a sense of the personal pride involved through the reaction of Meiji McDonald Mahoney. These weren't just animals, they represented family legacy for some.
So hopefully this deep dive has given you, our listener, a much clearer picture of this specific dog, the Gas House dog, and the whole world surrounding him back then. It's a specific slice of history for the American Pit Bull Terrier.
Definitely. And it leaves you with something to think about, doesn't it?
Also,
Well, think about the level of detail in the record keeping, the sheer respect, the value placed on dogs like the Gas House dog purely for their lineage and fighting-related traits back then. What does that tell us about, society's priorities, or at least a segment of society's priorities regarding animals, breeding, and competition over a century ago?
that's a really interesting point. The meticulousness of it all, focused on those specific traits, definitely something to mull over.